Hello students, welcome to the topic of how to write your research paper in regard to your thesis project. So if you remember the from your previous RM class in the last semester that we have studied that the components of a research paper body includes introduction, methodology, which is also called materials and methods, results and discussion, and conclusion. So these are the four main components of your research paper body. And in contrast to this, the components of your design project are basically the steps involved in your design thinking process, and they are problem area finalization, data collection, which includes primary and secondary study, then the data analysis, which involves the insights from the study or the research which you have done, leading to formulation of final design brief or the solution neutral problem statement. And then we have concept generation, concept development, and finalization, and the first cut prototyping, and then we test the prototype with the users to get their feedback, and we use that feedback to develop the final concept and also refine our prototype. So this is an iterative process involved in our design thinking process. So you all know the general flow of the design thinking process. Now, the sole idea here is to fit the components of your design project into the framework of a research paper. So this is what we'll be basically doing. And so let's go through the each and every components of your research paper body. So first is the introduction. Here in introduction, we'll first start with, so what is the problem you are focusing on, problem or issue that you are focusing upon? And then what is the need to solve the problem, right? So what is, how big of a problem it is, or what is the gravity of the problem? Is the problem affecting many people, or is it occurring in many places, uh, and things like that, right? So what is the need to solve the problem, and what is the literature saying? So what are the other researcher or other authors are saying? So this is basically the literature review. And then what are the existing solutions available, and what are their limitations? So existing solution can mean existing products in the market, or it can be patents or concepts, and why are they not implemented, or what are their limitations, which paves the way for your intervention. And finally, the concluding part of your introduction can be what is the aim of your paper, right? So the aim of the paper can be the aim of your project, which you have mentioned earlier in your synopsis. And so coming to the methodology section, uh, so we can start with how did you finalize your design requirements? So in order to finalize the design requirements, did you conduct any survey or interviews or observations or shadowing? And if you had conducted any surveys or interviews, then what were the questions asked? How many people were approached? And what were their, the age, occupation, and other demographic data? What are the techniques that you have adopted to generate the concepts? Here you can specify specific methods of design thinking process like brainstorming or mind mapping or relational mapping, Scamper, or any other technique which you have sort of formulated with regard to your own project. Like you might have used analogies or metaphors to generate your concepts and so on. Then you have to mention how you have selected or developed your final concept from the pool of concepts generated. So for example, you might have generated say n number of concepts, say 30 concepts or something, and you are now selecting, or you would be combining few of those top concepts to a final concept. And so what are the criterias you have considered for evolving to a final concept? So you should mention it. So here again, we make sure that we are not looking at what is your final concepts, but in order to sieve out the final concept, so what are the criteria you have considered, right? So mentioning those criteria is what we are looking at. And again, how would you be assessing the success of your final design? So once the prototype is completed, so would you be taking it to the potential users for testing? If so, then how many such users are you planning to procure the feedback from? Or are you planning to collect the performance based data? Uh, or are you planning to procure the self-reported or user satisfaction data, which is a subjective data, or are you planning to procure the both, right? So here in each of these sections under methodology, so you can sort of create a flow chart. So this becomes one section, this become another section, and you can sort of create a flow chart under the methodology section, right? So you can also use things like flowcharts, images, tables in your research paper. And but again, so what methodology is basically what are the steps you would be doing, mentioning the steps, right? We are not looking at what are your design requirements, no, but how you are arriving at those design requirements, right? So if you are conducting any survey, so what are the questions asked in those survey, how was it conducted, so how many people were approached, and what portion of the people were from one particular age group, or what was their predominant occupation, and so on, things like that. And again, what are the techniques, so you have to mention the techniques again to which you have used to sort of generate ideas or concepts. And again, we're not looking at concepts. Make sure that there's a difference. So there's a difference between what concepts you have arrived at, and there's a difference between how you have arrived at those concepts. So we are looking in methodology section, we're looking at how or you have arrived at those concepts, or what are the techniques. So you have to mention, like if you have used like anything like analogies or metaphors, or any mixed match of any other techniques, so you have to mention explicitly. See, as designers, we might be doing many things in an implicit fashion, right? But here, in terms of research paper, we have to sort of explicitly mention each and every processes which we did in a certain fashion, so that reading your research paper, some other designer can get insights, and he can sort of employ some of the techniques which you have used in their projects, right? So make sure that you get the feel of what this research paper is about. And similar for this section, and as well as the how the user feedback section, that how you would be conducting the user feedback, right? So you can have suppose this sections as subsections under the methodology. And suppose if this is your 2, uh, and this can be your say 2.1, this can be your say 2.2, and so on, 2.3, 2.4. You can, in your paper, you can write in that fashion also. And there is another thing which I want you guys to sort of see, is that, see, the text here for the 2.1 is written in blue. It's because in many of your cases where the primary research is not uh, extensively conducted, so in that cases you can incorporate the primary data or primary study as a part of introduction. Okay, so but if you have on the other hand taken quite a bit of time to make your questionnaire, and you have also conducted in a series of fashion so as to get more quality data from the users, then obviously you can sort of mention it as a part of your methodology section, right? Okay, which is the results and discussion. So again, it it can, you may mention what are the insights from your primary study, surveys and interviews, and based on it what are the your design requirements. So you have to mention, right? So here you don't say that what questions you have asked, but you mention that what are the responses you got, right? What are the insights you got, and based on the insights, what are your sort of design requirements? And then you have to also sort of mention the initial concepts generated, and then also describe the final concept which is adopted, and also discuss how people or users used your sort of prototype or product. So once you have taken it for your user testing, so what were their response, right? So here are two things. So first, we talked about, if you are measuring the performance based metrics, it means that how the users actually did the task. So it may mean like the time taken by user to complete a particular task and your comments on it, or the frequency of errors which are incurred, or or depending on your project, it can be the average number of clicks performed for a task, or a force user exerted by the user on a particular product, etc., etc. So these are all the performance based metrics, uh, which if you are sort of dealing with it, you have to sort of mention it. And if you are not, say, if you are not looking at performance metrics, you are sort of looking at subjective or self-reported data from the users, you can comment on how users felt while using a product, or what was their overall experience. Did they like your solution or not, or were they satisfied or frustrated or indifferent with your solution, or did your product evoke some good memories or vibes, etc., etc., right? So all these things, as you can see here, which is subjective and self-reported data from the users. So you can have either performance based metrics, or you can have both self-reported metrics. So or you can even have both, right? So you have to sort of mention, right? In here, in the results and discussion is all about mentioning what are your findings. So coming to the next section, which is conclusion. So here you can sort of go through each of these points, like what do you think, was your product successful with respect to the problem chosen? So now you would be concluding your paper. So you have to sort of reflect on how the overall exercise was, right? And you can also reflect upon the strengths versus the drawbacks of your final solution, and how would you be planning to address the drawbacks of your solution, right? And what is the future scope of your final design which you have selected, and how do you think will it impact the society and mankind at large? So you can comment on all these things to make up, which will make up the conclusion portion of your research paper. Now this is to do with the major body of the research paper, but there are also other elements of your research paper, like the title of your paper, which is the most important thing. It can be similar to the title of your thesis project. So it can be something like there is a sample or a example, like MEMHANS, an assistive device for dementia patient, or it can be something like design and development of an assistive device for dementia patients, right? Something like that. Abstract is again, which is an important thing. It should be a one paragraph abstract. The word limit can be limited to 200 to 300 words, and it's basically a summary or overview of your whole paper. And then keywords. Keywords are basically the topics or subtopics pertaining to your research work. So the keywords can be sustainability, keywords can be uh, any other thing like inclusive design or universal design or any other thing, depending which is more relevant, or design for elderly. So things like that. So these would be the search terms under which you want your article to be visible once it is published in the web. And then you should write down your names as authors and affiliations, and also the references. In case of again the reference section, you can follow either of Harvard referencing style or APA, which is American Psychology Association styles. Uh, so which will include the title of the research, the authors, the year of publication, and the page numbers involved, right? So make sure that you are sort of citing the other authors uh, properly. And there are some general instructions like plagiarism check. You have to check that it is less than 15%, right? And grammar and language, there is no syntax error when it comes to the language or grammar. And it is always advisable to use in third person, and also using the past participle. So for example, instead of saying I have done this experiment, you can say this experiment was conducted, something in this fashion. And also now come so some of you were having doubts like what should be the page limit. So let me tell you, so in conference based papers the page limit is usually till 8 to 10, right? And the minimum can be 5 6 to 8 10. Or if it is a journal paper, you may be allowed to write till 20 pages, or at max 35 pages including references. So I would say that it should not be less than 5 6 pages, and should not be more than 30 35 pages. So don't worry about the page now, but you first put your contents, and that is what I should be you should focus on. Okay, so to conclude, I would say that get started with your research paper, and also so since you guys might have seen my mail, and you need to sort of upload your the latest works with your concept development progress in the drive. You should be uploading, and yes, stay tuned.